And welcome to Thrift Shop Biography. This is the one about Frank Sinatra. Thank you for listening. Hello, Cleo.
Hello, Richard.
How are you?
I'm all right, actually. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
That's good.
So this week you found a book about Frank Sinatra.
Yes, I found it, and I was beside myself with excitement and told you I found it, and you were like, Cleo, I found that ages ago.
Yeah.
You've just forgotten. So luckily we both had one then.
But it's not written by him because he never wrote his autobiography.
It's written by his daughter, Tina Sinatra.
Did you know he had a daughter called Tina?
Do you know what? No, because I only know about Nancy Sinatra.
I only know about Nancy Sinatra.
Yeah. What I realised from this is that I thought I knew Frank Sinatra, but I didn't.
Oh.
Yes, reading this, I realised that he actually has quite a family life that probably that last bitch he married covered up really well, because she wanted everyone to think that she was the only wife, and she actually succeeded in burying his past.
Interesting.
Is that what you thought?
I knew relatively little about him. I'm not really a fan, not into his music, so I've never really been bothered.
You knew about Nancy Sinatra.
Yeah, she's very cool.
But then you'd probably heard of Barbara Sinatra.
No.
Did you know anything about any of his other marriages?
No. Oh, I knew, obviously. Right, what I know about him is basically what we've read in other people's books already, because he crops up a lot.
Yeah, he's in everyone's books.
Yeah, we read Mia Farrow, of course, who was married.
Yeah, true.
So I've learnt more about Frank Sinatra in the last year than I have my whole life.
Yeah, that's right. And he's in Quincy Jones's book loads as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they loved each other.
So, not being a fan, I did have a certain idea of him where he was kind of like this gangster-related, big-headed star. And actually, this book really turns all of that on its head. I like the Frank Sinatra in this book.
Yes, but he is still a gangster-related, big-headed, mobster, amazing singer. But you also realise why he is, because he's so vulnerable.
Yes.
You know, you sort of see what drives him. You really get to know him, don't you?
Yeah, you do. And I'm stayed fully aware that it's written by his daughter.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is kind of through rose-tinted specs. But actually, as the book goes on, she's always very kind when she talks about him. But it's not. She doesn't shy away from talking about his shortcomings either. So I feel it's a valid kind of portrayal of him. I feel like I've got to know the whole man, really.
I do too, but I tell you what, I feel like you could read about 100 different books. He's such a complex man, and he lived life to the full, because we've got Ava Gardner's book as well.
Oh, yeah,
and that's going to be extremely revealing.
Yeah.
And I just think I could read about Frank Sinatra from every single angle for the next 50 years, and it would never not be interesting.
So you were a fan of his,
yes.
Right?
My gran was his biggest fan back in the original day. No, get this. My granddad was in the war, posted out in Algiers or something, and wrote to my gran and said, "We've just heard on the radio this amazing voice. You've got to listen out for him. His name's Frank Sinatra." They were on it right from the very start. And I feel, it's my place to carry that on. I just love him. I love him anyway.
So
I love that music.
I know that he's regarded as one of the greatest voices of all time, but to be honest, I find it quite generic. Am I missing something? Do you agree that he's a fantastic singer?
Yes, I do. And I actually get when people describe it, like Quincy Jones described what it is exactly, his technique with his voice and stuff. It is really amazing. It's technically amazing. It's emotional. And she says in this book, the way he connects to the music is because he's really, really sensitive, and he feels everything so deeply. And then when he sings, he feels the songs. He can't not. A bit like Billie Holiday, just like that. They absolutely live it when they sing it. So that's why it connects with people so much, because they're just deep feeling people.
I really feel like I've missed out then, because I did not get that from his public persona at all. I thought he was just like a glorified club singer.
Right. We learn that through this book, don't we?
Yeah, I know. I feel like I've missed out. Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's begin the begin.
So this book, written by his daughter, Frank Sinatra was in his 40s when she was born. So we get a bit about his early life, but obviously she didn't live it. It's just what she's been told.
Yeah.
And we get a lot about his later life when she was present in it.
Yeah, she really skims by it. Yeah, he was born in 1915. He was an only child, and he was always lonely.
Yeah.
So that's the very core of his being for the rest of his life, it seems. He's a lonely soul. And he was born in Hoboken.
So good they named it twice.
So good I said it twice. And his parents were Sicilian immigrants. Obviously, Sicily being the home of the mobsters. They sound really cool, actually.
Yeah.
They ran a restaurant and a saloon bar. So he grew up singing at the piano in his parents' club, basically. And his mum, Dolly, was a suffragette. In 1919, changed herself to City Hall. So she's pretty cool.
It sounds like she's a driving force behind that family and young Frank Sinatra, actually.
It does, doesn't it? And then his dad was a proper man hero because he was a firefighter. When he died, he had a sort of hero's funeral and they lined the streets to cheer him home, sort of thing. That's what he had to live up to. You know, a hero dad.
Yeah, and I think that it's that classic thing of him having an overcompensating mother because the relationship with the dad wasn't really great. He was a bit distant, his dad, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he was basically never at home because he was out earning a living being a fireman. So he was never at home. And that is probably what put the hole in his soul that he was constantly trying to fill. It's textbook. Have you noticed that we're becoming psychology experts?
Yes, in fame, yeah, definitely. So Frank Sinatra met... Now, this is going to get confusing because his wife, his first wife and the mother of his children is called Nancy. So Frank met Nancy, and obviously then Nancy Sinatra, the singer and daughter, was named after the...
Yeah, but they always do it because his son was called Frank as well.
Oh, yeah.
So their kids were Nancy Sinatra, Frank Sinatra and Tina Sinatra, which is the only not confusing one.
How boring to just literally name your kids after yourselves.
I know.
Well, they met young. Frank was 17 when he met Nancy Senior, and she was 15. And they got married in 1939, so actually they've been together a while.
Yeah, they really waited till they were a reasonable age. She was 24. Mm-hmm. So they were together about 7 years before they got married. That's very civilised behaviour. They didn't rush into it.
No, and Frank Sinatra said that he married his best friend. He said it's the smartest thing he'd ever done in his life if only he'd been able to stick with it.
Yeah, right.
Now,
yes.
It's all well and good saying that, but I tell you what, that woman, Nancy, did stick by him the whole time, and he had, like, numerous affairs.
Oh, millions.
Numerous is even the wrong word. What did he had infinite affairs.
Yeah. They never ended.
Yeah.
No, it's true. But I tell you what, she knew what she was getting herself into because 2 months before they got married, he was arrested for, a quote, a romp with a married woman that made the papers.
I couldn't work that out. Why would that be an arrestable offence?
Oh, arrested? Maybe they were in public. For some reason, that made me imagine they were in a car or something. I don't know. Were they, or did I make that up?
So they were shagging in a car.
Oh, right.
They were shagging in a car in 1939.
Yes, that's right. Because they couldn't go home. Because they both had spouses at home. So they were in a car.
And he got arrested for that. Okay.
Yeah.
It says it's a morals charge, so it's probably public indecency, isn't it?
Yeah.
Steamy windows.
So, she knew what she was getting herself into. But she also said that what really connected them is that when, he was only 17, he told her his dream was that he was going to be a huge singer, the biggest star in the world. And she was all for it. And she believed him. She believed in his dream. So that bonded them for the rest of their lives because she was the first one to say, you're not mad. This is going to happen to you and I'll be with you when this happens. And she was.
And what's interesting about that, like he does obviously go off and have a multitude of affairs and other marriages. He does keep coming back to her.
Yeah.
And even like 20 years down the line, they'll go and like rent a holiday cabin and go and stay there together for a couple of days.
Yeah, just the two of them, because he's always saying, I want to try and make my marriage work. Or the kids talk about, do you hear that car coming up the drive? You know that's Dad, don't you? He comes all the time. And there's a separate door up to her room so that he can just come and visit her whenever he wants.
So even when he's married to other people and having these publicised affairs, he still goes back and has an affair with his first wife and the mother of his children.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It is crazy, but I do think that when he goes back to his first wife, I do think it's for different reasons. I don't think it's for sex. I think it's because he misses the family life, and he wants to go back and pretend they're a family again.
Yeah.
It's really not fair on her.
It's not fair on her at all.
Because she's just holding a candle for him.
I know.
In a way, that's abuse in a way that he uses her.
Yeah,
like
I know.
that.
She does seem like a pretty sensible woman, though. She seems to be coping all right.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah. But also, he's grounded with her. She knew him before he was famous, so everyone else might want something from him or thinks, oh, you're Frank Sinatra, and she knows that he's just an ordinary person.
Yeah.
He really loves being part of her family as well, being part of a much bigger family because she was a Catholic, and that whole everyone sits around the dinner together, and that is also the draw home as well for him because that's where his kids are.
Yeah.
And he really wants to be part of a big family.
Yeah, he wanted a big family, didn't he?
He really messed it up.
They had Nancy Sinatra Jr. and Frank Sinatra Jr. And then, because at that point he was having numerous flings and affairs, when his wife, Nancy, became pregnant again, she had an abortion. This is before Tina, who wrote this book, was born. She had an abortion and it really, really upset Frank.
Yes.
Do you think she did it to punish him for his affairs?
Yeah, they'd moved to LA by then, and while she was always threatened because he was a singer and he always had, groupies throwing themselves at him and screaming at him, she wasn't so threatened by that. But when they moved to LA, the threats were massive movie stars, beautiful, clever movie stars, and that started to become a real threat. It was 1945 when she got in their car and found a diamond bracelet and thought, oh, wow, he's bought me this beautiful bracelet for Christmas. And then he didn't. Then at New Year's Eve, they had a big party and she saw this glamorous Hollywood actress wearing this bracelet. Around that same time, it was headline news that he was having an affair with Lana Turner. Then she found she was pregnant. She went, I can't have this kid with this going on. So that's when she had an abortion. She literally had to draw a line. And then she did. And he was devastated she'd had an abortion. I was actually very surprised to hear that he got over it and sort of wanted her forgiveness and sort of wooed her to get his wife back. I'd have thought that would be unforgivable to someone like him. All the Catholic and Italian and all that sort of stuff. But no, he wooed her back. And so they got pregnant again 2 years later. And that was Tina. And a year after she was born, he left her for Ava Gardner. He left his 1-year-old. So... it wasn't a great time to be born for Tina.
Whilst we're talking about kids, I had no idea that Frank Sinatra had a son who was a singer. Did you know this?
I did know that. And I did know that he went around singing with big bands and stuff. But I didn't know any more about him, like that he was clearly desperate for his dad's love because his dad left when he was 4 and he was absolutely gutted. And that he basically tried to become Frank Sinatra too to win the approval of his own dad.
I'm surprised that he isn't more well known, not even to the point where I have even heard of him. He must have had pretty much a non-career.
Well, we're skipping around in this book, right? But I'm going to link to this. In 1963, when he got kidnapped it turns out by some hooligans that were at school with Nancy in her year, but it was a serious kidnapping. It was 50 hours they had him for, and they thought he was going to die. They didn't know who did it. And Frank Sinatra ends up negotiating, and they get him back, which they didn't think they would. So that brought them closer again, and that was all good for a while. And then it went to trial. I reckon they were probably advised by lawyers to say that young Frank was in on it. That was obviously what they'd been told or they thought up to try and get out of it. And the press ran with it and basically killed his career because everyone went, oh, he did all that for publicity. It was just a hoax. He got heckled at shows after that, and it did massive damage to his reputation. He probably never recovered from it, like career-wise, because everyone just thought he was an idiot. And that's what those kidnappers did. That is probably the reason he isn't as famous as he should be, because he was obviously very good.
That's so unfair.
Yeah, I know, it's really bad. It's the press again.
Yeah.
They are the biggest criminals and the biggest evils in all of these books, I'd say.
So we've got to the point where he's left his family to go with Ava Gardner, right?
Yes, and we need to read her book because that'd be absolutely brilliant. But they totally fell in love. She is absolutely gorgeous, but we also must say that so's his wife, Nancy. But Ava's just another level. You can't compete with that. Plus, She's obviously a great laugh. And by all accounts I've heard over the years that they used to drink anyone else under the table. They're a couple of real party people. Yeah, it's funny, because to leap about again, but when he married Mia Farrow, who was only 21, and you just imagine that she was too young for him. He was probably like, oh God, I just need to go to bed, and she's out partying. It was the other way around, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Mia Farrow just wanted to read a book and go to bed, and Frank Sinatra was out all night partying. Yes. So I think with Ava, he really found his party pal. He found his equal, a real wild character.
Mm-hmm. His daughter, writing this book, actually has nothing but nice things to say about Ava Gardner. Because I thought she would demonize her to a certain extent for splitting up the family, but actually she doesn't. She says that of course, she was only a young girl when she met Ava Gardner, but she always has like fond memories of her and says she was always very kind to her.
Yeah, I know, it's nice. God, what a hard, difficult childhood, though, seriously. The feeling of abandonment and then having to meet all these bloody women and fight with everyone screaming for your dad and the press and, oh my God, all of it. Bloody hell. Anyway.
She does say that Ava Gardner, even though they just obviously had this passionate connection, she said it was just such a melodrama of jealousy and breakups. And she said they clearly should have stayed lovers and not husband and wife.
Yeah, true. The unsaid part is, they're a couple of drunks. Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of drama.
Just... Nightmare. And they're both stars as well, which means they're probably massive narcissists and stuff.
Oh, totally.
So what I didn't know, and you have told me before, is that Frank Sinatra, around the time of like Ava Gardner, his career really went down the tubes, didn't it?
Yeah, it really did. Yeah, he really dropped off.
Yeah, and she kind of helped him get it back by going into movies, right? But they'd almost split up by the time he got his first massive success in From Here to Eternity.
Yeah, and he got an Oscar for that.
Yes, amazing. I didn't even know that. But I had no idea that he went like off the boil for so long, to the point where he had serious depression. And what really surprised me is that he made an attempt to take his life.
Yeah. She really does say about how much guilt he had from leaving his family, leaving his wife and kids. He suffered terrible guilt, to the point where sometimes he avoided going to see them because it broke his heart when he had to leave, because it broke their heart and it broke his heart. Yeah, he sort of messed himself up.
And I think as well, he was okay with like leaving his children because he knew he could provide and give them a good life. But once his career went down, it's like he said that he almost couldn't face his children anymore, because I think he thought that he wouldn't be able to provide for them for much longer.
Yeah,
and of course, then Eddie Fisher was kind of coming up and he was taking the Sinatra audience.
Yeah.
And one day, Frank Sinatra walked past a theatre and the queues for Eddie Fisher were around the block. And it was when Frank Sinatra couldn't even get a booking at this point.
Yeah, right.
I had no idea that he just lost everything like that.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Well, even Elvis dropped out for a while.
Did he really?
That's why there's a 68 comeback special, because you have to go to come back.
Of course, yeah.
So we're around 1956, and this is when rock and roll comes up, and he's a ballad singer with big bands. So rock and roll is totally different from that.
Yeah.
And so that makes that the ballad and the whole ballroom dancey sort of thing was going out because people were rock and rolling and the young people were finding. So he had to move with the times, but it took him a while to work out how to. That's a time of massive change, 1956.
Yeah, that's when he did go in and spend more time making movies rather than music, right? That's how he reinvented himself.
Yeah, exactly. Then he bought that Palm Springs house. Oh, God, I've been looking at pictures of it. It is gorgeous. It's like actually what a 1960s house is supposed to look like in the desert. All like one story and a really square spaces and really open spaces and a pool and palm trees. And so he got it down, didn't he, life? Because Palm Springs you can easily get to Vegas from, get to LA. He flew everywhere. God, he was living the life. Wasn't enjoying it, but he was living it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of almost his downturn which got him in with the mob.
Yes.
Because they would keep him booked in their nightclubs and stuff.
Yeah.
And he felt loyal to them because when he wasn't getting work in the big music halls and stuff, the mafia bosses who literally run the nightclub industry in the 1950s, I mean, they probably still do, they would keep him in employment. And he felt very grateful for that. And that's how he got in with them all.
Yeah, that's right.
Because not being a Sinatra fan, like one of the things that I know about him that he's associated with the most is the mob.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, Tina says in this book, well, actually, all the entertainers in the 1950s were booked by the mafia, like George Burns, the comics.
Because they owned the clubs.
They would all be, but for some reason, it just became cemented with the name Frank Sinatra, even though all the stars were.
Yeah, because.
But she seems to think it's because his name ended in a vowel.
Yes.
So it sounded like a gangster, whereas like George Burns and stuff, it just doesn't sound like a gangster. But then, like you said at the beginning, he's Sicilian.
Yeah. He's got a golden ticket.
Yeah.
And then JFK, this is really interesting because I always wondered.
Really interesting.
Yeah, he's been friends with him for years. But he's also, it turns out his best mate was also Nancy Reagan, who knew.
Yeah.
And they talked every single night.
I know, I find that a bit weird.
Yeah, but then that's the wife of an actor as well. In fact, she was probably an actress herself. So, it's all just the film world, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't think that you should be talking to another man's wife every night on the phone. You shouldn't, though.
Yeah, he just likes Nancy's.
Yeah, he's big on Nancy's, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
You don't get that name anymore, do you?
No, not really, no.
Do you know any Nancy's?
Only you. Yeah, so around that time, JFK, he needed support from the mob-infused unions.
Yeah.
So I was like, what difference does the mob make? And because if all the unions, are saying don't vote for this or that. Anyway, so John F. Kennedy himself asked Frank if he could have a word with the mob, specifically this Giancana, who was the boss of the Chicago outfit, and he owned all the clubs. And he said, can you ask him to have a word with the unions to make sure they all vote for Kennedy? And so, he said a couple of calls later, the rest is history. There's a phenomenal turnout in Chicago, and they absolutely wiped the board there. Then he's president.
Yeah, JFK is president of the United States of America thanks to Frank Sinatra and the mob.
Then JFK went after the mob, tried to shut them down and got all the police after them and really made a massive effort to shut down the mob.
It was such an audacious turnaround to actually ask for their help to get nominated or to get elected. And then when you're in office to get the administration to go after them. I mean, that's dangerous. I mean, is that why he got shot?
It could well be. Do you think anyone else has ever thought of this, or are we breaking new ground here?
I don't know anything about the JFK assassination. It's just because it's just such a huge thing. I know that if I scratch a surface, I would spend 3 years researching.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you would. I tell you what, though, if I was a mobster and I helped JFK get elected, and then he turned around and tried to send me to jail forever, I would shoot him.
Would you?
Yes, I would, because I'd shoot people every day anyway. Why not?
What?
You would. Why wouldn't you shoot the man who tried to bring you down?
Oh, if you were a mobster.
If I was a mobster, yes.
Yeah, all right. So the mob assassinated JFK.
I think we've solved it.
Moving on.
It's probably obvious to other people.
Well, politicians and mobsters, they're two in the same, actually.
One and the same, do you mean?
Oh, did it one in the same?
Yeah.
I think anybody who runs for office, I think you have a criminal brain anyway.
Yeah, I do.
And all the dodgy dealings they do, it's not like they're all altruistic. Of course they're not. They just it's all to further themselves. It's absolute mobster behaviour.
Totally.
Any politician in any country.
Two sides of the same coin.
Yes. One side of two coins.
Yeah.
So actually his relationship with the mob is very complicated because, of course, then when that happened, when the administration went after the gangsters, that makes Frank Sinatra look really stupid.
Yeah, it really does.
And disloyal. It almost makes it seem like he could be in on it.
Yeah, it does. And then the next thing that happened was JFK was going to stay in his place. And he was so proud that the president was coming. And it was all in the papers. And then he cancelled the day before. So that humiliated him.
Well, he cancelled. He went and stayed with Bing Crosby. He was famously
rude.
a Republican. So that it didn't almost make sense, but it really humiliated Frank Sinatra.
He really did. And a year later, though, when he was assassinated, Frank Sinatra was on the set of a film.
Yeah.
And he just went straight home and shut himself in a room and cried for 3 days. So it's all quite strange.
Oh, do you think Frank Sinatra put a hit out on JFK?
Yeah, and then was sorry for 3 days. Yeah, that's it. Oh, we also know from Pablo Escobar's book that Frank Sinatra might well have been one major coke dealer.
Holy crap, you said that because that's when,
Pablo Escobar's son said that Frank Sinatra was quite a kingpin in receiving coke into America. We can't know this for sure, but that's what we read, so we can only repeat it.
Well, it's an odd thing to claim if it's not true, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like you say, if he did have his downturns, he would need the extra money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if he's in with the mob anyway,
Yeah.
the connections are all there.
Nobody ever mentions coke, but there's probably quite likely there's coke going on as well as all the drinking and stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody ever says it, though.
Yeah, I think it was much more underground at that time, though, wasn't it? People just might not have known.
Yeah.
It would have been such an exclusive set of people that were doing it.
Yeah.
Studio 54 made it mainstream, didn't they?
Yeah.
So I think that anything before that, when you think of like the 50s and the 60s, you don't think of anybody taking coke, but of course they were.
It must have been going on, but it was just really hidden.
But then Pablo Escobar kind of streamlined the operation and made it like a multinational conglomerate, like Walmart.
Yeah, right.
He got the distribution down, and that's how it became like the drug of the world, I guess. Now, here's something I learned about Frank Sinatra from this book, which I didn't expect, that he was very much into. Do you remember when the right wing of Hollywood kind of did the blacklist and
oh, yes,
the McCarthyism and stuff?
Yeah.
Well, Frank Sinatra really was on the right side of all that.
Yeah.
Like he would work with people who had been, what did they call it? The Committee of Un-American Activities or something.
Yeah.
And the people that refused to cooperate with it, they did get blacklisted. And some of them about 10 of them went to prison, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And Frank Sinatra would help them and he would work with them at a time when people didn't.
Yeah.
At the time when like John Wayne and stuff would openly be completely right wing about it.
Yeah.
And Frank Sinatra really went against all of that.
He did. He was a massive supporter of the underdog, basically, no matter what that was.
Yeah.
Like Vegas, they said when the Rat Pack were there, Sammy Davis Jr. can perform there, but he can't stay in the hotels and he can't gamble. And Frank Sinatra said, if he can't, then I won't play. And he held off until they let him gamble and stay there. And that changed the rules for everyone, forever. He was a real fighter for people's rights to be equal.
Yeah, gosh, you know what? It says in this book that in that complex in Las Vegas, when Lena Horne played, her son swam in the swimming pool and the management drained the swimming pool after he'd been in it.
Yeah, it's disgusting. Disgusting.
Wow. But hey, look, Frank Sinatra is there kicking up a stink saying this isn't right. And
actually gets things changed.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah, it's really cool.
This made the Kennedys nervous of their association with Frank Sinatra because they were worried that it would upset some of their voter base. And I think that's why they moved away from Sinatra a bit. In fact, at the inauguration, Sammy Davis Jr. had just married a white woman. And so they asked Frank Sinatra to tell him not to come.
Yeah, right.
You think the Kennedys were very progressive and forward thinking, but actually there's a lot in this book that tells you that they played it very, very carefully.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Frank Sinatra didn't.
No, that's true. Since the whole Marilyn Monroe investigation that I spent a lot of time back in the day in reading about, I'm very suspicious of the Kennedys because I do believe they had her murdered. They had her murdered, though, I swear to you.
Yeah, well, they're politicians.
Yeah, and they are politicians, but that's what happens if you cross people or if you seem to jeopardise them in any way. They'll have you exterminated.
Like Daleks.
Yes. There's a better word for that as well, that the mobsters do.
Do you mean assassinated?
Yes, I do.
Oh, we're so articulate on this podcast, aren't we?
Yeah.
Well, the Daleks are gangsters, actually.
Yeah, they are. Anyway, what I feel like in this book, it's really good. It's a really good read. You go through her life, you go through her schooling, you go through her boyfriends, you go through all the different times she had with her dad when she sat on the side of the stage, just in awe of her dad, and all the experiences, all in real time. And then you suddenly come across this brick wall, and it is when he meets Barbara Blakely Oliver Marks. Everything goes sour, and then it's just over half the book pretty much, and then it is just like one big slagging off of this awful woman who ruined her dad's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost like a legal document of why this woman is a monstrous bitch by Tina Sinatra. The end.
Yeah, I like the fact that Tina Sinatra says that Dolly, so Frank's mum, when she met Barbara, she said, I don't want no hooer coming into this family. Because in brackets, she's also put, she pronounced the epithet hooer the way they did back in New Jersey. And I love the fact that she's against Barbara so much. She wanted it documented that her grandmother called her a hooer.
Yes.
I love that.
Well, she actually kind of was. She was a high-class hooer.
Because she was married to one of the Marx brothers, wasn't she?
Yes, but what she actually was a showgirl at the Riviera in Las Vegas, right? So she wasn't a hooer, but she was, because she was a showgirl, and then her other job after the dancing, naked pretty much, with feathers, was to hang around the piano lounge after the show as room decoration. And of course, if you have aspirations of grandeur, she would pick up higher class men. And she picked up Zeppo Marx, who she calls the unfunny one, who was twice her age, but, you know, a legend and rich, and married him. And what that gave her was legitimacy to move up in class, so that by the time she meets Frank Sinatra, she's in that class.
Yeah.
She used to be married to a Marx brother, now she can marry Frank Sinatra, but actually she's a showgirl. She worked her way up, she earned it. She had one kid with the Marx brother that was absolutely the centre of her life, and then was clearly just using him.
Yes.
Because he sent her for 12 years. He sent her to a finishing school in Switzerland or something, paid for it. This is Zeppo. He actually sent her to get trained to be good on someone's arm, you know. That's a high-class hooer. I'm going to have to start using that word all the time now.
Hooer. What's interesting is that at this time that he met Barbara, Frank Sinatra was still seeing Eva Gabor.
Yes, that is interesting, isn't it?
Now, what's interesting about this is we've read Eva Gabor's sister, Zsa Zsa. We've read her book. It's a fantastic episode. Go back and listen to it.
It's a great book, yeah.
Because she actually gives us a couple pages of the time that Frank Sinatra followed her home. Zsa Zsa wouldn't take no for an answer and basically banged on her bedroom door all night. And she said no, and eventually the maid got him to sleep in the spare room, but his car was still outside, and Zsa Zsa Gabor didn't want her young daughter to see Frank Sinatra's car. So in order to get Frank Sinatra to leave, Zsa Zsa Gabor gave in and shagged him just so he would leave.
Yes.
But he was also seeing Eva Gabor, the sister.
Yeah, no, she didn't mention that.
No, she didn't mention that.
And she doesn't hold back on anything. I thought she told us everything.
And you know, Eva Gabor and Zsa Zsa Gabor are almost identical, because I made that mistake on the Facebook page where I put a picture of
Yes,
Eva
that's
Gabor,
right.
Because I thought it was Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Yeah.
So actually, in Frank Sinatra's defense, perhaps he thought they were the same person. Perhaps he thought Zsa Zsa was Eva.
They did a lot of wife and husband swapping, though, didn't they?
Didn't they, hey?
Yeah, they did.
The hooers.
Those hooers. Hollywood hooers. Yeah, so, and Barbara was, well, I definitely always believe what I read. I currently have only read Tina Sinatra's account, and so I totally believe that this woman's the devil. You know, I'd have to read her account to be persuaded otherwise.
Do you know what? I bet she's written a book. I bet Barbara's written a book. It sounds like she cashes in and does everything for the money.
Yeah.
So there's a book by Barbara Sinatra out there.
Yeah. I mean, unless Tina has just absolutely lied about every single thing she did. I mean, she even told people that she'd married for the money. And I tell you what else, because there's no point going through it bit by bit, because it's just a sweep right to the end of you watching the slow demise of Frank Sinatra, seemingly aided by her, because she seems like she's drugging him. Did you get that?
Yeah, it's like when he really begins to slow down, it sounds like Barbara's going out on the town and he's just staying at home incredibly depressed, and he's taking medication for his depression.
Yeah, but she's making sure.
Yeah, it's like Tina doesn't explicitly say, but she's leading us to believe that maybe Barbara was doubling up on his medication because it would make him drowsy and stuff.
Yeah, he just gets doped up to the eyeballs. Not long after they get together, it's just a slow descent.
I kind of wonder why, though, because you marry Frank Sinatra. I don't think Barbara just married him for the name and the money.
That's what's implied.
I mean, why would you not want to hang out with Frank Sinatra, one of the biggest stars in the world? Why are you keeping him drugged at home so you can go out?
Well, I suspect he was a very difficult man. by all accounts.
Oh, and actually, they were together for like 30 years.
Yeah, it does say they argued loads, so it'd be easy just to dose him up and then go out on your own. Be a lot easier to handle.
Oh, you know what? Actually, Tina overheard him on the phone one night, phoning Mum, the original wife, mother of the children, Nancy.
Yeah.
And she said he started crying, saying that he made a terrible mistake in marrying Barbara.
Yeah.
I mean, is that true, or is that just Tina saying stuff because Barbara's a bitch and that's the narrative of this book?
Oh, no, I'm sure, because he was always going home and crying and saying he shouldn't have left home.
Yeah, it's true.
And I have no doubt that he was a monstrously difficult man, you know, and probably cruel and all sorts of stuff. And her way of handling it was to drug him up and spend his money, which she did. And there might be a load of women who probably go, good on you. That's the best way of handling this terrible man. But, you know, that was her dad, and she had to watch that happen to her dad, and she only saw the best in her dad.
Oh, dear.
But that's the story that you seem to read, isn't it?
Yeah, she actually says, I mean, she kind of knows that her dad is a depressive. I think at one point he actually says he's a gold-plated manic depressive or something.
Yeah, he totally does.
And he's a drinker. He's not, I mean, I think the whole thing with Mia Farrow, the interesting thing about Mia Farrow and Ava Gardner is, even though the marriages ultimately didn't work, they all stayed really good friends for the rest of his life.
Yes, that's true.
But Tina does say that her dad is a tortured man.
Yeah.
He has always been lonely and vulnerable. And she said that he was seeing Eva Gabor when Barbara came into his life. And she said if only Frank Sinatra had trusted in happiness, he would have married Eva Gabor, who was good-hearted and totally nuts about him. And she said...
Yeah, and then he'd have cheated on her and broken her.
Yeah, oh, that's the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, but instead... This woman broke him. So some people might say that's only fair, but...
Yeah, I'm just thinking, you see, because I'm reading this book by his daughter, Tina, and I really like the man that I'm reading about. But the reality of it is, if you were one of those women he left behind, and there were plenty of them, perhaps Barbara's coming and giving him a taste of his own medicine and he deserves it.
Well, it's a lot of medicine, that's for sure.
Yeah, doubling the dose.
Yeah, but that's this girl's dad. You know, ultimately, that's all she knows. That's her dad.
Yeah.
And he's getting destroyed in front of her eyes, and it's tragic. He starts to not be able to remember words to songs.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
it's horrible.
And he said, she could see the joy draining out of my dad. You know, and Nancy Sinatra was saying to him, get out now. But he couldn't endure the embarrassment of another public divorce because he'd got a lot of bad press from the divorce with Mia Farrow. Yeah. So he kind of felt stuck in this. It had to be his last marriage. Yeah, so he just got stuck in it.
And I think the worst thing that Barbara did is actually she did distance him from his family.
Oh, yeah.
And because she tried to erase them.
Yeah.
Or like you said, she wanted to be known as the only wife of Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
And like you said, in a way she did. At the beginning, you said in the 1980s, that's all you knew, and you thought she was the only one.
That's true. But she also really went after his money. Like, she signed a prenup, but bit by bit, she was working with a lawyer to change that, to change the prenup, to get this, the rights to this, and she was trying to get the rights to all of his back catalogue and his merchandising, you know, and then, I think one of the cruelest things she did was, as he was getting quite a bit older, she sold his Palm Springs house and moved into LA. She sold all of his personal stuff. So when he lived in this house in LA, he kept thinking he was in a hotel lobby because he didn't recognise any of the furniture. He kept going, when are we going home? What a thing to do.
Oh.
That's cruel.
Honestly, that made me so sad.
Yeah.
It's absolute cruelty to take somebody, an old man who's dying.
All their familiar things around them are gone.
And he kept asking her, when are we going home? He didn't quite get what was happening at that point. It's despicable. Barbara fucking Sinatra is a bitch.
Exactly. So you think, this might just be her opinion. But then you go, well, if that actually happens, you can't argue with that. That's just plain cruel. Oh, my God, she'd installed bloody cameras even in his room so she could keep an eye on what Frank and his kids were saying. You know, it was all paranoia about money. It all came down to money. Yeah. I mean, like, after he died, Tina had gone into his room, just looking for a keepsake, I guess. She took his favourite robe because it smelled of him. So she just picked it up and went to leave the room with it, thinking, I'll have a bit of him, a smell of him. And Barbara had saw her do it and said, what are you doing taking that robe? And then she went, of course you gave it him. Of course you can take it. And she was like, what? You know? And that she said to this day, that's the only thing of my dad's I got at all. And it isn't about the money. It's about so much more than that, you know. It's just, she just robbed them of their dad. in every way.
Gosh, she's a real evil.
Yeah.
Oh, she's an evil piece of shit.
Yeah. Either Tina Sinatra has done a good sales job on us, or she is an evil piece of shit.
Well, do you know what? Here's another thing about it is, I think Frank Sinatra was about 60 when he met Barbara, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact is, enough people were warning him about her. And, you know, all this drugging him and him getting older and him, her selling his house, that happened later on in life. He did have a good period of like 15 years where he could have just got rid of her.
Yeah, that's why she started drugging him. I really reckon it's total control.
Yeah, do you know what? And this is such a surprise to read. I didn't know any of this about Frank Sinatra. You think about him as this fantastic icon, this dynamic, successful man. And to read that
he's pushed around by
in
this
his
woman.
older life, it's really very sad and pathetic, really.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's his own mental demons. He's a depressive and he's vulnerable, and he had things that he never worked out during his life, and they kind of all came back in later life, didn't they?
Yeah. And do you know what his legacy as well is? Bill Clinton was president by then when he died, which was 1998, and he offered them a military funeral. You know, the ultimate honour as an American is to have a military funeral with the US flag over your coffin and all that. And Barbara said no, because he wasn't in the armed forces and it would be an embarrassment.
Yeah.
He's a national treasure and a total legend, and that would have been an amazing send-off.
Of course. I mean, I don't really understand why Barbara vetoed that, because what an honour to bestow upon somebody. And
I know why, because Bill Clinton conferred with Tina, Nancy and the wife, not with Barbara. And so she just put her foot down, because she's a bitch. Yeah, she's a terrible person.
She really is, because that's really denying America a good send-off for who is one of the American icons.
Yeah, he really is. He really is.
Gosh, yeah, we hate Barbara.
Yeah, but it really is almost half the book, isn't it?
Yeah.
This tearing down of this terrible, terrible woman. Anyone has anything else to say in her defence, please write in. Let us know.
We'll go on the Facebook page. Come to our Facebook page, Thrift Shop Biography, and let's have a massive discussion about Barbara Hua Sinatra.
Yeah. Yeah, go on. Try and convince us otherwise, because Tina has done a very good job of winning us over.
But I think is what you say. Tina's told us things from her perspective, which is a daughter of Frank Sinatra. You know, she's got skin in the game. But actually, when you look at the physical things Barbara did objectively, those are not the actions of a caring wife.
Absolutely not. She'll be absolutely minted. I think she's probably died now, but it'll all have gone to her son.
She tried to get Frank Sinatra to adopt her son.
Yes.
Zeppo's son.
He very nearly did.
Yeah, he very nearly did.
She was a master of manipulation.
Wasn't she? And she even got the will changed in like the last week of his life or something, didn't she?
The last week, yeah. All the properties. She got everything.
God.
And then auctioned it all. So Tina says, you know, you'd see these letters even, everything's so personal, just auctioned to strangers. They got nothing. All the portraits and things of the family gone to strangers.
I wonder do you know what?
Me.
I'm quite interested to find out what happened to Barbara for the rest of how she lived out the rest of her life. I hope it was miserable.
Yeah, I know. It won't be though, will it? She'd have had a marvellous time.
Yeah, I know.
She had a great time.
Yeah, she did, actually. She's a bit of a villain, isn't she, really?
Yes, she is. Yeah, boo.
Booed Barbara. Okay.
Let's stop slagging her off now. Let's go and read tons more about Frank Sinatra, the most fascinating human.
He did it his way.
He did it her way, the bitch.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thrift Shop Biography. We love making this podcast, and we're absolutely thrilled that so many of you are already listening. You could really help us out by leaving us a review somewhere, wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you could share us, tell your friends about us, or drop some links on social media. We have a Facebook page called Thrift Shop Biography, so make sure you come over there to hear about the episodes first and what else we're up to. Okay, see you next week. And if you're new here, there are loads more episodes now to go and listen in the back catalogue, so make sure you go and enjoy them. Okay, thank you very much.